In the name of the one and only, in whose oneness we all disappear in our nothingness, and therefore it is the only absolute reality. On the waves, my soul sails on this abandoned raft afloat. In this ocean of emotions, as it raises in unsequenced ebb and flow, unanchored, unbound, undistant. Light beams of shifting perspectives permeate the tamed, dark depth below. Waves of her memories rock me gently. She paints my thoughts in undecipherable ink blots, in desired redundancies. Lived days are scribbled on the fog of time's impermanence. Life is love, love is life. This rhythmic consonance in tango nudges my loneliness away. I gasp to breathe in a moment, holding its impatience deep within, breathing out a sinking sigh, still being here, being still. The I and glues from the M of my essence. The poem I just read, On the Waves, obviously has layers of meanings. But there are plenty of metaphors that address the concerns we have from the previous program, which will continue in today's session. My soul sails on this abandoned raft afloat. The abandoned is a reference to the loneliness we feel in the spiritual when we are disconnected. And thus, we are yearning for a connection, or perhaps more appropriately, for a reconnection with the divine essence from whence we've come. On this abandoned raft afloat in this ocean of emotions, and the emotions too are there only because we prefer to feel. We prefer to feel the essence of being rather than reasoning it. So, we may disconnect with the reality down here, but we never give up on reconnecting with the cosmic reality. And it's in that ocean where we need to swim. It's that ocean that rises in unsequenced ebb and flow, implying that its order is not the order we can comprehend. And in there, it's not so much that we, as the skipper of this abandoned ship, are in any way in charge of where we go, but we simply allow ourselves to be taken in a direction that destiny has determined for us to go to. And thus we are unanchored and we are unbound and undestined. You may perceive this to be too much of a deterministic or predeterministic notion, but at certain level that is so. That allows us to pretend that we are in charge, whereas in reality we may not be. Light beams of shifting perspectives permeate the tamed dark depth below. That tamed dark depth below is the depth of the ocean, where we, as a droplet, try to immerse into the oneness of its totality. Sometimes we know, and sometimes we don't know where we are headed. And thus comes the shifting beams of light that lights our way and makes the unknown before us a bit more manageable in terms of human comprehension. Waves of her memories rock me gently. We are memories, in essence, a collective of the human experience we have had and that which we have lived through time. We are a collection of memories and nothing else. Those memories define us. They define our perception. They define who we were and who we have become. And it's those memories that paint our thoughts. Here, the painting may be of hues and shades and colors with which we may not be familiar. But the plethora of the palette of nature makes it more colorful than our perceptions allow it to be perceived, let alone being detected, discerned, defined, and comprehended. And so, when that paintbrush hits the canvas, it paints our thoughts in undecipherable ink blots. The ink blots appear to have kissed the canvas out of its own will and not being dragged and smeared by the tip of the brush. And thus, it's the hand of destiny that places them where they end up being. And they do have, as the poem says, they fall in desired redundancies. The redundancies refer to the patterns that our human mind creates and perceives and tries to find so it can match a level through which we can make the ununderstandable a bit more understandable. Through those memories, lived days are scribbled on the fog of time's impermanence. Time is impermanent, regardless of how we perceive it. And in that illusion, there is a fog that separates us, that gives us an elusive sense of permanence, of a reality, that gives us a sense of comfort. And in it, our life is defined by nothing but love, not the human bodily desire, rather the spiritual yearning that constantly reminds us where we had come from and where we are headed. And in this rhythmic consonance, in tango nudges my loneliness away, is a reminder to us as individual living beings that we are part of a totality, that we need not feel lonely. And thus we can spread our antennas of spiritual perception to reconnect with that totality, whether we can perceive it through our senses or not. And if a moment is met in that encounter, it's there where I gasp to breathe in a moment. The moment is breathed in because, in a sense, it is owned. You become the time. Instead of going through the time, you become a part of it. And it's in that moment, breathed in, that you allow for it to stay within you. You're holding its impatience deep within. It's the nature of breathing in that demands a breathing out. The sequence is defined as life, a breath of life flows in both directions to sustain us. But if you realize within any one such a moment what your true essence is, that epiphanic moment, that deep urge, that light that shines upon your heart, it allows for you to breathe out a sinking sigh of appreciating that the mere fact that you're here in this moment, as this moment, is the grace for which you ought to be grateful. And it's in that the I unglues from the M of my essence. The very simple sentence, I am, is more important as an incomplete sentence. Do not put a period at the end. leave it blank. Leave it with ellipses. Because you don't know who you are. Or you shouldn't admit that you do. Because the mere acknowledgement of knowing who you are may prevent you from knowing yourself better. If you know yourself the same way today as you did yesterday, then the last 24 hours were wasted. That if you're not constantly in search of yourself within yourself, you are dormant. That which we call in Islamic philosophical thought, ghaflat. The ghaflat is not being dormant in the physical, but rather in the spiritual. And the spiritual is not some sort of an elusive thought. Neither is a strictly rational syllogism where you want to find out an answer to the question, either in affirmation or in negation of the statement stated many years back, I think, therefore I am. Or perhaps, I am, therefore I think. I think that it's the latter that has more credence. True that we are a thinking being, but our mere rationality is not the totality of our being, but a part of it. And therefore, when we claim I am, we acknowledge the totality of our being, not merely the rational, but the rational, the sensible, the egoistic, the egotistic, the selfless, and the many shades that defines us, and the many media through which we understand ourselves. So, I am of the opinion that I am is a prerequisite for me to be able to think and to do more than just think, to feel, to be, to reason, and yes, to be silent, because it's in the silence that the language of the internal dialogue, or more accurately, of the internal monologue, speaks louder. That loudness is not of decibels, but rather of resonance with the waves of the melodies that are sang throughout the cosmic reality. We hear it, we sing it, we dance with it, we move with it, and that is our essence. to feel the totality of a cosmic reality, and to feel that we are an inseparable part of it. And thus, if we can use a Sufi terminology, God is us and we are God. God is within and without. God is placeless, spaceless, timeless, and in that, it's a totality that cannot be confined to any media, to any medium, to any space, and to any dimensionality of the human perception. The divine, therefore, is both immanent and transcendent, and is beyond the reality we perceive. Let's take a short break, and afterwards we will try to come down to a lower level of reality where we can breathe a little freely through the time of now and of the historical past that we alluded to in the last program.